Good Wednesday morning of Easter. And this is Luke's account, okay? And it's the famous road to Emmaus, the disciples on the road to Emmaus. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, okay? But it's, you know what it is? You want to know the truth? It's the story of the Eucharist. It's the life of the church in worship on the road of life itself. The road to Emmaus is the road of life, okay? And they joined to each other, and Christ joins them in the journey. And as they go along the journey, he tells them they tell him what happened, and then he interprets for them what it all meant. And so what we've got here is really, I think, an apt description of the early ecclesiastical life of the church, okay? All righty? The early life of the church. And where it culminates, it's a wonderful story. He said, they told him about Jesus, this Nazarene. We thought he was this and that, and they whacked him, and he went to, but then we were hoping he would be the one who would redeem Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And the women say they've seen him. They're all kind of, but these guys are still trying to figure it all out as they're going along, okay? So and it's a repetition of the biblical account, the resurrection accounts. But then he starts to explain to them what it means. And what does he do? He does what we do at Mass. He reads the gospel to them. He reads the Old Testament to them. So watch, I'll read it. Now I'll give you the reading. He said, then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted them what referred to him in the scriptures. That's what we do in the liturgy. So in the early liturgy, they're reading the Old Testament, okay, as witnesses to who and what Christ is, the Messiah, you see. Now, as they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression he was going on farther. That's always the sense of passing by. That's a biblical notion, see? In Exodus, see? But they urged him, watch what they say, they urged him, stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over. So they invite him to stay. So it takes a two-way street. He walks with them freely, but then they ask him to stay with them. They're opening their hearts to his presence. No heart, no presence. Get it? It's an invitation of love. See, it's an invitation to love. It's very basic, but it's an invitation to love. Okay? Okay, and it happened that while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, broke the bread, and gave it to them. Those are the words of the institution of the Eucharist. That's what we say at the Eucharist, okay? And it happened that while he was with at table, okay, wait a minute. He took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he vanished from their sight. It's in the breaking of the bread that they saw him. Okay? In the faith, in the cultic faith of the church, in the communion of believers celebrating the liturgy of the Eucharist. That's where Christ is revealed to them, both in the word, think of the ancient text, but also in the bread. You see that? So then they said to each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us? So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11, and those with them who were saying, the Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon. And here's what they say. Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way, and how, this is the more important line, and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. For the vast majority of us, we come to see and know Christ in the breaking of the bread, in the Eucharist. And that's the truth. In the faith life of the church, celebrated together with each other in the breaking of the bread, that's really true. Our faith, we receive our faith as it were in baptism, but it's exercised and lived in the Eucharistic community. Not just at Sunday Mass, but in a communion of believers who are nurtured spiritually, ritually, by the bread of life and by the bread and the word of life that comes from the scriptures. We are nurtured by the proclamations of the church, her teaching, but also by the bread and wine we consume, the body and blood of Christ. See? On the great Exodus, we are not only taught and guided by God through the church, we are fed the eternal manna. As the Jews were fed by manna in the desert, so are we. But this is now the desert of life. and the manna is the body and blood of Christ himself. Yeah, it's really, really true. See? We discover Christ in the life of the church. We discover Christ in the celebration of the Eucharist shared together as a community. It's a community of faith. When I think of the 51 years I've been at St. Tim's, St. Mark's, even though I was away in Louisville, I kept frequenting it, going back and forth over the years, 13 years worth. I was back at least once a month, and sometimes in the summer times for weeks at a time. I never lost my ties to this parish. And just this morning, as we were saying, how many of that first generation are now gone? I've probably been part of 5 generations, almost 5. Yeah, 4 for sure, and so many of the people I was very, very close to. My closest friends, I'm thinking of Junie and Bill. There was a whole gang that I was so close to. Every single one but one is dead. Entire generation. Now, their children and grandchildren are adults. Their children are grandparents. Yeah. 5 generations. The life of the faith. It takes place at the Eucharistic table and beyond, into the school, into the playground. The life of the faith on the ball fields where I first got to know the people of the parish, the kids. I remember meeting Dick Heinrichs on the ball field the first day I was here in 1971, around August 18th or 19th, around the 19th. And I walked out in the ball field. The little guys were just playing. There were little kids, first graders, playing baseball, learning to play the game. And Dick walked up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Dick Heinrichs." Now, Dick died 22 years ago, okay? But that was the beginning, and I began to understand the body of Christ was the life of the church. It takes places on the ball fields. It takes places at the park. God, we had great parties at Timmy's. I shouldn't tell you that. Well, oh, man. We had some wild-ass parties. They were wonderful. Parish parties. Anyway, we used to do these dances. Holy God, all the fun we had. And almost all dead now. But that's the life of the faith. And I'm still saying the Eucharist in the same church with the same people. Not the same physical building, but the same community of faith. Now going into the 5th generation. It's the life of the faith. That's the life. And the breaking of the bread, which is the community of faith at the table of the Lord, lived out even on the ball fields.